Sal Berry,
Of course you remember the blow puck, because I think I bring it up at least 6 times a year.
and Tim Parish.
People tell me that they want the glow puck to come back. You know what I say to those people?
Get a bigger TV.
I say good day.
I say good day to you, sir.
Yeah.
I say good day.
This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Thank you for clicking on that play button. Welcome to the Puck Junk Podcast. Sal Berry here along with Tim Parish, and today we are going to talk about the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. So far we've had some of the preliminary games, and I've watched the ones that I've been able to watch, and I'll grump on that in a little bit. But Tim, how you doing? What are your thoughts on this so far?
I am doing fantastic. And my thoughts on this are they're a mixed bag. I mean, going into this, I know we talked a little bit about what we were going to expect and see. Anytime you get the best players in the world all playing against each other, it's entertaining hockey. And I was expecting, the very same coming out of this. I thought it was going to be a little more intense than Olympic play, and so far I think it has been. Has it lived up to expectations? I'm not sure, but I think a lot of that has to do with how it's been presented rather than the actual product on the ice. So
I think
I'm excited.
That's a good point there, how it's been presented. My problem so far, because I'll tell you this, I was excited about this, and I will admit, what made me excited about it were actually the silly commercials that they played during the Stanley Cup Final, and then during, the summer, I'd catch a commercial, fictitious Reg Carling
Reg?
show. Yeah, Reg, and is it just me, or is Nana much nicer? I mean, I like those commercials because I feel like ESPN was poking fun at themselves because they don't cover hockey. I don't think hockey fans watch ESPN, or if they do, it's not for hockey, it's for other stuff. So I have not had any desire to watch ESPN since, actually, I think the last time I watched ESPN is when they broadcast that KHL game during the lockout a couple of years ago. And before that, it was probably when the NHL was actually on them. But so I thought that they were poking fun at themselves, like, we really don't know a lot about hockey, haha, whatever. But then they, but then their coverage, like, all of their games have been on this thing called ESPN3, which is their streaming channel. And I'll admit, I've watched some of the games on stream, and the quality's been fine. It's actually, that hasn't been too much of a headache. What really pissed me off was that the USA-Canada game was on something called ESPNU, which is like their college channel. So I could not watch the first game between USA and Canada. I couldn't stream it because I didn't have a subscription to ESPNU. I couldn't watch it on my TV, again, because I did not have that as part of my cable subscription package. So right there, ESPN gets a big fail because here was this intense game between two heated rivals, the two biggest hockey superpowers, or two of the biggest hockey superpowers, and I can't watch it.
That's interesting because ESPNU is actually part of the package that I have on my cable. I just assumed that it was a normal ESPN channel, just like regular ESPN, ESPN2, so on and so forth. So I didn't have any problem watching it. What I missed was the second game, the one that was broadcast and streamed. So that's the one I didn't get to see.
So what's funny is I've been frustrated with ESPN on and off for the past 20 years because I remember back in the 90s, they used to show a lot of their games on ESPN2, and those what was it? They used to show a lot of their games on ESPN2, and not every single household had ESPN2 as far as cable subscription packages. Now, back in the 90s, if I remember correctly, this is before they started going to like the different tiers, like 100 channels, 150 channels, 200 channels. It was either you got it or you didn't get it. If you paid extra, it was for something like HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, stuff like that. So ESPN2 was not in a lot of households in Chicago, and I remember they would show Blackhawk games on ESPN2, but because I guess if I understand it, or no, it wasn't that they blacked them out. They would black out games, but if it was a national broadcast, they couldn't black out the game. But if it was a national broadcast on ESPN2, it didn't matter. I couldn't see it anyway. But that's going back to the 90s. Now it's just as frustrating because I get ESPN, I get ESPN2, but I didn't subscribe to some god awful subscription package that has 500 channels so I could get like, ESPN 8, the Ocho.
Yeah. I don't know if it's actually part of the service that I have. I mean, it's on there. I think
Well,
I
then it
pay
is.
I think
Yeah.
I pay an extra $5 a month to have the sports package, so it might be included in there.
hmm
Um, which is just the extra sports channels. It's not like the all the games package things. It's just,
Right, center
maybe a
ice, right? Not
couple,
like
maybe
center ice.
yeah, maybe it's a couple extra channels. I don't know, but so I was able to watch that. I was able to watch the game that was on ESPN too. Um,
And I watched
uh,
that too, and unfortunately, the coverage was fine. The game itself was boring. Uh, team kids table versus team leftovers.
boring. I like that game. That game showed me a lot of what I was hoping to see from Team North America, but wasn't sure that I was actually going to see. I thought these guys were going to come out there. I wanted them to come out there and be fast and just be high flying and just make some crazy plays and stuff like that. And the fear was that they were going to go out there and just lack leadership and making lots of mistakes and all that kind of stuff. And where there were mistakes, those guys are fast. That is a fast team.
I don't think that they're going to make a lot of mistakes because uh, a couple of things. Like, so it's pretty much split 50-50 between USA players and Canadian players. And a lot of these guys have been playing with each other in tournaments. A lot of, the Canadians and the Americans have been, they've been playing against each other, in international tournaments for a long time. So they kind of know each other anyway, know their tendencies. And then you have a lot of the guys have been teammates before in like World Juniors and stuff like that. So I don't think that there would be a leadership problem. I don't think there'd be a gelling problem. I think that there's the old adage of age and treachery versus what is it, youth and exuberance or something like that. But
But you have to admit that, yeah, leading up to this, the guys know each other. They've played with each other. Some of them are friends. They came up through the juniors together. Okay, that's all fine and good, but this is international play on an NHL level. And these guys don't have a lot of the NHL experience that they do to go out there and play. I mean, yeah, they play on their regular teams, but come on. They play on a team where there's one, two superstars and they're shoved onto like a third line or a fourth line in some cases, or they're the superstars like Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel that are on the top lines, but they're surrounded by veteran players and guys that have been around for a while. Now you put them all with young guys that are good and can play, but there isn't a whole lot of leadership overall there. So pitting them against, all these guys that have a lot of professional level experience, I thought it was going to be interesting to say the least, but these last two games that they played, there's no question in my mind they could be a sleeper team in this.
and it should be interesting then on Tuesday when they play again, or is it Tuesday? When do they play? They're going to North America is going to play another preliminary game against, I believe, Sweden. Let me see. Nope, Czech Republic
I was gonna
on
say, I think it's the Czech Republic.
September 14th. Yeah, that's it. So they're going to, it should be interesting to see how they do against them. If they end up winning, if Team North America ends up winning the entire tournament, like right now, all we've seen is preliminary or tune-up games, whatever you want to call them, exhibition games. If they end up winning the whole darn thing, does that make the experiment a success or a failure? I mean, if they beat Canada, I mean, would that be would would that be like, oh my God, what monster have we created, right?
That that'd be something to see that. To see the North American team go out there and stomp on Canada or even the US. I mean, look. Okay, yeah, they're going to play against Czech Republic. They lost against Russia the first game. They won this one in a shootout. Czech Republic's rough. They are a rough team. The only reason why they out yesterday was it yesterday, Saturday? Yeah. The only reason why it went to that is because if you watched any of the game,
Hmm.
Russia just I don't know what they were doing. They were asleep at the wheel most of that game, and so they let the Czech Republic hang around, and when they could have easily put them away long beforehand, and they just didn't. The first game, they kind of, with the exception of special teams, Russia pretty much dominated the Czech Republic in the first game. They're rough. I mean, if you look at the roster of the Czech Republic team, it's not like the Czech Republic teams of old. You
No,
don't you don't have a lot of the star power that they used to have, and a lot of the NHL big guns that came from that country. Um, I would say, if you look at all 8 teams, I would probably say the Czech Republic is the weakest team
hmm
of the groups, even though they did pull out a game. It is preliminary, and I think everybody's going to step up their game once the actual tournament starts. I don't I don't see them making it out of group play.
have you watched any of the games online yet?
Yeah, I
Okay.
watched the um, I watched most of the first Russia Czech Republic game
hmm
online, and I watched part of the Finland Sweden game online,
The
and then
first one or the
the
second
the
one?
first one.
The one that went to overtime.
Yeah, and then today I watched um, North America and Team Europe. Most of that game, I saw about 2/3 of it.
Well, what I find kind of funny is that some of the so I watched the second Finland Sweden game, and where Sweden won 6-3. And what was funny was that they were basically just broadcasting the feed from, I guess, Sportsnet in Canada, because it
Yeah,
was.
Sportsnet has the other feed. It's ESPN and Sportsnet, and I forget some European station has it
Well,
too.
what's funny was that the Sportsnet broadcast, so they weren't ESPN 3, which is their online channel, wasn't even bothering to put in commercials. So like what would happen is they'd broadcast the game and then they'd go to a commercial break, and like literally, like, if you know how like a player gets penalized and then they cut to a commercial, the camera would just focus on the player in the penalty box, because that's how they would start when they'd come back. So I'm just like sitting there at my laptop watching this guy in the penalty box dry his face off, or like, they'd go to like
Oh
commercial,
yeah, yeah,
and then like you see the coach pacing back and forth, and it'll be like, and we're back, and there's head coach blah blah blah, and it was just funny, like.
yeah. It's the same as this when you get the center ice feeds. If you ever if you ever get the center ice local broadcast for whatever team you're watching, it's like that too because they black out the commercials because they don't obviously they think watching the commercials from a region that you don't live in is horrible and bad,
Well, that
so
annoys me.
they don't broadcast them, and then you're left to just watch whatever the cameras are focused on before they turn on, and a lot of times you end up watching the interviews that they do in between,
Hmm.
especially when they go to in between periods, and they'll do an interview with a player, and you'll end up seeing it twice. You'll end up seeing the initial interview that they broadcast, and then they may make a couple quick edits to it, and then they broadcast it again on the actual broadcast.
Hmm.
So you end up seeing it twice, and that's part of that feed. The online ones is exactly the same way. The NHL games I've watched online, they're all like that too. So you end up with, I call it dead camera syndrome, where it's just you're just looking at whatever, or they back the camera all the way out, so you're looking down at the
Uh
ice, and
huh.
it looks like ants going around because the camera's from the roof. So
What is
yeah,
this? A hockey game for ants?
yeah, there you go.
So I like that though. I don't mind. I mean, I don't have to see commercials. I think it's funny though because the Saturday night's USA Canada game on ESPN 3, they had commercials, but they didn't have enough commercials. Like they'd show like 30 seconds of commercials and then like a minute and a half of like nothing of like the the players on the bench or whatever. They just they didn't have enough. Like it's like they sold some commercials, but not enough to fill the 2 minute commercial break.
It's probably the same thing. They probably have so many commercials sold and they can broadcast the national ones across all feeds, but anything that's local, they probably can't feed through. I
Well, let
always like
me.
to watch those and wait for the one time that somebody's mic is turned on and they slip up and say something that they shouldn't.
I love that.
I've heard quite a few interesting comments that Bob Urie's made on some of the Penguin broadcasts. So
I remember back in the 90s, watching the Blackhawk feeds via a satellite dish, and during commercial break, Pat Foley, Dale Talon, who was his color commentator at the time, would just they would either just just totally just like BS for the 2 minutes, or they'd rip on a player who was having a bad game, or they would just just mess around with each other. They were funny to listen to. Like that was a lot of fun. You're not going to get that so much anymore because now I think they know. Whereas before, back in the 90s, not everybody had a 6 foot satellite dish and were intercepting the transmission that was going from, you know, Joe Louis Arena to the studio. You know what I mean?
right.
But yeah, so it looks like all the games themselves are going to be on ESPN or ESPN 2, so maybe they'll do a little better. I did like the studio coverage with Brett Hull and Chris Chelios in the studio. That made me
That's what I was
feel.
going to ask you about.
Yep.
Is what you thought of that studio team?
I think it
You know,
was
having
okay. I mean, I forget the host's name, but she did most of the talking. But that was probably okay because Brett Hull and Chris Chelios they're they haven't been in front of the camera as much. So basically, you just set them up with easy questions until they get really comfortable, until they get to Keith Jones level.
yeah. It's interesting because the you have a studio team that's made up of two ex NHL players, two Hall of Famers, guys that have been around. They played in the World Cup. They won the World Cup. These guys are Stanley Cup champions. They're no stranger to being in front of the camera, and it's interesting to see. Okay, here's two guys that you don't normally see on a broadcast. You don't normally see doing color or doing analysis and things like that, and you just think that you take for granted the fact that they're just going to be able to sit there and just be like anybody else. And it's funny because the two of them back and forth, it's like they're just having a conversation with each other half the time and they don't even realize the camera's turned on.
And I think that's
And the,
okay.
and those little cut scenes that they keep doing of them giving like their memories of the World Cup previously, where they're both sitting in a bar and they both have beers sitting in
Uh
front of
huh.
them, and throughout the whole 5 minute thing, the beers never get any lower. I find that hard to believe with the two, considering the two people that are there, but whatever. Um, yeah, I find that to be interesting, but
So I think as long as we're talking about the World Cup and this is a preview of the World Cup, I know everybody else has talked about the jerseys, but damn it, I want to talk about the jerseys too because why not? So what do you think? I'm liking the North America jersey. I'm liking the Europe jersey. Everything else is pretty much standard. I even like the USA jersey. I didn't like the ones that they had in the in the Olympics because the shield on it reminded me too much of the Rochester Americans. Here I like the redesigned logo. I like the USA jerseys too. I probably like them all. Hard to mess up the Sweden jersey because they just do their 3 crowns and it looks awesome.
yeah, the jerseys problem with the uniforms. I don't like the Europe Team Europe ones. I don't like their logo. The logo is just odd to me.
It should have been just like the symbol, like the euro, right? Like the money sign, the euro.
Yeah, I don't even know if that would have made up for it. It's just weird. It's weird looking. I don't
It,
know.
it's hard. It's hard to come up with the logo for an international team that's not really an international team. I mean,
Right.
it's an international team. It's a cross national team. It's not like, you go to, like, okay, let's say it's the Team Italy, right? You could do the shape of their country, you could do their colors, you could do their national bird. There's so many things you could do with when you have one, and when you have, like, 7, 8 different teams making up, or excuse me, 7 or 8 different countries making up a team.
8.
8, you can't really borrow, like, from one of the countries. You can't make it feel too much like, oh, well, this is obviously a Slovakian flag, or this is obviously the German, these colors, or something like that. It's hard.
Oh no, I got that. I just the shape of the whole thing, the shield with the hockey stick, and
And the E.
I assume that's a hockey puck to make it look like an E. I don't
Yeah,
know,
I think it's creative. I
but
think that's creative, and
it's
actually,
odd.
I like their their dark uniforms are kind of weird because they're split down the middle with, like, the different colors of blue, but their white uniforms, I think they look really nice. With they kind of have, like, this like an aqua or like a teal
Yeah,
almost.
they were kind of early San Jose Sharks looking
Yeah, well,
today,
love me my
which I
Sharks
know you have
jerseys.
an affinity for the that time frame.
Just
So
a well, no, and that yeah, just a little bit. Um,
I like the North American jersey. I like the black. I like the gray. I think that's kind of a cool. The orange. I don't know the orange lettering. I could take or leave that, but I actually like their setup.
Well, it
Um,
seems like the only orange markings, and I can't remember their the white uniforms, but I know that the home uniforms, they have the NA in orange, right? But
yeah, the NA's in orange and the triangle's outlined in orange and all the numbers are outlined in orange and
oh,
they have an
okay,
orange
yeah.
stripe. There's like three orange stripes going down the sides underneath their arms.
Yeah, I actually would like a little more orange. I'd like some orange stripes
Yeah.
on the socks. I saw that I think they were all wearing Warrior gloves, and they said Warrior and orange on the cuff, and I would like a little more of that orange. I,
You start adding more orange with that black, it's gonna look like Halloween jersey.
yeah, like the old NHL jerseys from the '80s, the All-Star jerseys.
No.
No, and you know what though, the heather gray, that kind of offsets that a bit. I like it too. I saw a kid a couple weeks ago at a local ice rink, and he was wearing not a jersey but a Team North America T-shirt, and I think that was kind of cool because it's like, hey, all right, you're big with the 12-year-old crowd, the youngsters.
Yeah. They I, I don't know. When they announced the like and they broadcast everything and they showed them all. I think the initial reaction everybody was like you were on either on one of two sides. You were kind of excited about them or you were like, "Oh my god, what have they done?"
Hmm.
And I think the long since they've been out for a while and people have seen them, and now that people have actually, um, gone out and they've played games and you've seen them in these, they're not as they're not as bad as I guess they initially started to look.
Yeah, that's true. I think when you see him playing it looks cool. The stripes on the sides, on the sides of the jersey, do kind of give it a distinct, like, this is the World Cup jersey. I'm not even offended by the SAP logo that's on all the jerseys, although NHL
Well,
cannot should not do that for NHL games.
yeah, and there was a lot of talk about them kind of making these a little more KHL looking with
Ugh, no, no. I had a
everything
friend
on
who
them.
lived in Germany for 4 or 5 years, and he lived in uh, Köln. We call it Cologne, but it's pronounced Köln. They have a team called the Sharks. And so I'm like, hey, can you order me some Sharks stuff? Because, me, if it's
Yeah.
hockey, I have to have it, right?
Right.
So I looked at their website and I'm like making a list of what I want them to buy for me, and like I want a puck, I want a T-shirt. Then I looked at their jerseys, and it was just like ads everywhere, and then there was like a Sharks logo in there somewhere, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pay like over $100. I don't even know what it would have been with the exchange rate to just be a walking billboard. Like that turned me off right there. And the same thing like when I see people like wearing like a Chicago Fire jersey and it says Best Buy really big and it has the little soccer, Chicago Fire logo on it. I
Right.
I that's terrible. And I think if they put I am old enough to remember when the Blackhawks did not have ads on the boards at Old Chicago Stadium. Of course, it didn't really matter because they weren't televising games, so it wasn't like anybody outside of the 18,000 who came to the game would have actually seen the ads on the boards, but it looked really clean. And then I think of like the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver, where they didn't have ads on the boards either. They had like the almost like a green like mountain design that was going around the boards, and then like the Olympic rings. It looked really cool. It was nice. It was like not distracting. And now we have ads on the boards. We have
Well,
ads on the ice. We have virtual ads on the glass. Now we're going to put ads on their jerseys. Next, they're going to find a way to just digitally beam the ads onto our retinas. So if we blink, we still see it.
here's the thing. You're talking, okay, I get the Olympic thing because the Olympics sponsorship is pretty much locked down pretty tight. I mean, if you watched any of the summer, you saw a lot of the stories that went on about athletes that compete in sports that aren't your traditional sports, like track and field type stuff that you don't think of. There's a season for that, or there's a team for that, or
Hmm.
it's not one of the major sports that's out there. And these guys make their living off of sponsorships, and they run races wearing you know logos and stickers and things all over their bodies as they run these races and stuff, and the Olympics didn't allow them to do that. And so the world's biggest stage, everybody watching, you could get paid a lot of money through your endorsements by doing that. So I know the Olympics locks down a lot of that, makes you sign contracts to where only their sponsorship is allowed. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of that. And if they play in areas or in rinks that already have that, they black it all out, or they repaint over it or do something like that. And I mean, sports arenas, it's a business. So, they're going to make money somehow. I was a little worried that they were going to go overboard with, putting sponsorships and all of that on these jerseys, but it's subtle. There's a couple on there, but it's not, overwhelming. Let's just hope that these stay the same jerseys for preliminary play as they will for the actual tournament itself.
Oh yeah, that's right. Then they'll have like the tournament versions of the jerseys where the
Right.
ads are, all over
And
the
I
place.
don't think they'll do that, but this
Nah.
is this is sponsored solely by the NHL and the Players Association. So because the two of them have that agreement, I mean, here's two groups that they have a lot of advertising money invested in what they do. So you never know.
Hmm. Yeah, so anyway, and then we have the trophy, or as I like to call it, an ugly vase inside of an uglier vase.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I
Well,
actually thought it
actually,
looked more like a couple of glass garbage cans
yeah,
stuck
actually,
together upside down.
oh, glass garbage cans?
Yeah, like those weird glass garbage cans like you see in like old people's bathrooms.
Huh. Yeah, my girlfriend said that. She looked at it and she's just like, "Oh, it's a vase inside of an uglier vase."
That's exactly what my wife said. She's like, it looks like a big vase. You should put flowers in there. I'm like,
Yeah,
they might.
yeah, okay, so looking back, in 2004 is when Frank Gehry, who's like an architect slash artist, he designed the Guggenheim Museum. He designed, there's actually, if you've ever been to Millennium Park in Chicago, there's the Pritzker Pavilion. He designed that. He does like all of these like elaborate architecture things with like swoops and sweepy things and whatnot. I don't know a lot about architecture, but um It's not the same as the 1996 trophy. If you look at that, I think that's like a slab of lucite, and it has like stick figure hockey players on it. Like, it's pretty.
Which year? Which one was that?
The 1996 one. So the first year they did World Cup of Hockey, it was a different trophy in '96, and then after that they switched to this trophy in 2004. Um, and actually, it's funny. When the 2004 tournament was going on, I was in Europe, and I was actually in Denmark, which is right next to Sweden, although I spent a little time in Sweden. And they had a couple of games going on in Sweden, like later that week. And I tried, like, I had a friend, I was staying with a friend, and I'm like, dude, we gotta go to this game. It was like they had like tickets to like Czech Republic versus Sweden, and it would have been in Sweden, and it would have been so awesome to go to that because in 2004 you still had Yager, you still had Hasek, you still had Forsberg, and they were still all like really awesome players, and I wanted to go so bad, and like
Right.
my friend was just like, oh, well, that's kind of far away, and we'd have to fly there. And I'm like, well, come on, this is Europe. Isn't there like some sort of bullet train or something that'll get us there? Because like I didn't want to
The
like,
channel.
yeah. Exactly. Right. I mean, it was like, but then again, I mean, and the friend that I stayed with was a nice friend, and I still consider him a friend, but like, he was also a little lazy because I'd be like, hey, let's go to Legoland. And he'd be like, oh, well, but that's on the mainland because I was in Copenhagen, which was like this. Uh, uh, there's like the mainland, and then there's an island which has Copenhagen, but everybody in Copenhagen calls the mainland the island
I
because
gotcha.
that's all the farmers and stuff. So they're like, yeah, we're the island, but really we're the mainland. And so they're just like, oh, that's on the mainland, and it was just too far. It was like it's like when your parents tell you you're like, Mom, I want to go to this, baseball card show, and she's like, it's too far. It's 45 minutes away by driving.
Yeah. I wish the card shows around me were 45 minutes.
How long does it take you before we get back to talking about World Cup stuff? How long does it take you to get to the Rosemont show?
About an hour.
Oh,
A good hour getting there. Half the time it's about an hour and a half to hour 45 coming back because there's
coming
always a
back.
ton of traffic.
Yeah.
So,
Which is funny because it takes me probably an hour to get there, and I live in Chicago, but I take mass transit. If I
yeah.
drove there, it probably would take me 35 minutes. So it's not too bad considering how far you're coming from.
So so this
Trophy.
back to this trophy,
Yeah.
the silver chalice engulfed in bubble wrap. Uh, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I, you know what? It's whatever. Like I said, my wife and I had this conversation the other day. She asked, she's like, "So this World Cup thing, what do you win?" I said, "You win a trophy." She's like, "Is it like the Stanley Cup?" I'm like, "Nope. It's nothing like the Stanley Cup." She said, "Do you get to keep it?" I'm like, "That's a good question. I don't know that anybody would want to keep it." And then I showed her what it looked like, and she was like, "Oh, you probably could put flowers in there." And that was about the extent of that conversation.
Yeah, it'd be cool if a couple of months ago on Puck Junk I did an article about trophies that used to be awarded, and there used to be this trophy called the O'Brien Trophy. And it'd be cool if the NHL dusted that off and started awarding that again because back when the NHL and the National Hockey Association were not the same entity, but I believe the O'Brien Trophy was originally awarded to the winner of the NHA, and then when the NHL formed, the NHA disbanded, and I believe the NHL took over the trophy. And then for a little while, that was like the trophy that you would win if you were the NHL champion because you still had to challenge for the Stanley Cup. So, and then after a while, then it became like a trophy for like the runner-up. And I think for a little while it was like a trophy for like a conference winner, and then they haven't like awarded it since 1950. So that would actually be. I'm not saying it's a better looking trophy. I mean, it's just like an old trophy with like hockey skaters on it and stuff. But it's old. That's kind of cool. And I think that's the thing. You can have an ugly trophy that's old and people will say, "Oh, but it's got history behind it." And that's true. And I think that back then, I can't say that now they do a better job than back then, or back then they do a better job than now. But I think back then, if they wanted to make a hockey trophy, they'd want it to look like a hockey trophy. And now I think they just try to be too abstract and weird, right? Like,
I would much rather get the old trophy that's, the part wooden and part fake gold,
mm-hmm.
and on the top of it's just a little golden hockey player guy. I'd rather have that than this thing. I mean, here's the thing. The actual trophy itself is very plain, I guess. I mean, it looks like somebody wrapped a silver vase in bubble wrap.
Well,
That's really what it looks like.
the bubble wrap is supposed to be ice that has skate marks on it.
Supposedly, yes. But the World Cup logo, you've seen the World Cup
Mm-hmm.
logo, right?
Well,
Where it's that trophy, only it's colored.
right.
So it looks like a piece of candy. I would rather win the piece of candy
Okay.
because it looks cooler than this trophy. But you know what? I don't think it's ultimate. It's not ultimately about the trophy. Yeah, the trophy's great and it shows, hey, we won, yay. But it's more about the competition than
The
anything
trophy
else.
symbolizes the
Trophy just
accomplishment.
it symbolizes what you did, and where you were. I
I
don't
mean, when
think it's
my
any Stanley Cup winners that are involved in this, if they win it, are they gonna skate around the ice with it held over their heads and be when they win the Stanley Cup? Absolutely not. But it is what it is.
yeah, I wish it was a little less trying to be cool and just, either vintage or cool. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we got a couple games. We got some games coming up here, and let's see here. Let me just pull up the schedule. I want to see which ones am I excited about. I mean, I'm gonna try to watch them all because actually, what's funny is the timing for World Cup of Hockey couldn't have been better because all summer I've been watching Game of Thrones, which I had never seen before. Uh, when we changed from AT&T, no, excuse me, when we changed from Dish Network to Comcast Xfinity, it had all of the Game of Thrones on demand. So
Yeah.
been watching that, which is great to not have hockey as a distraction. So I could sit and watch, 3, 4 episodes a night. It's hard to want to watch shows when you also watch hockey because there's always a hockey game on. So it's like, the Blackhawks are playing. I can't watch this tonight. I really want to watch the Blackhawks. Or oh well, another team that I like is playing. I like watching certain teams, but most of the time I'll watch any hockey game. But with no hockey on, it's just like yay, Game of Thrones. And now that I burned through all 6 seasons, and season 7 doesn't come out till like summer of 2017. So then World Cup of Hockey comes along and it's like, all right, hockey. So I am excited about this, but I'm definitely excited about USA Canada games, and I want to see any game with Team North America because I want to see they burned Team Europe a little too easily, and I want to see if they do the same to Finland or Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's just watching these preliminary games, USA Canada, it could get brutal. I mean, it could get brutal. And I don't know if I like that or I don't like that because, let's keep in mind these guys still have to play a season of hockey, a regular NHL season coming.
Yeah.
And if they empty the tanks in this tournament and go all out and guys are getting hurt and injured and things like that, it's not going to be very entertaining of a hockey season when half of your star players are sitting on IR for a couple months
Well, I mean,
because of various things.
think
So,
back to the 1991 Canada Cup when Gretzky was knocked out
yeah.
by Gary Suter hit him, knocked him out of the tournament, and then also Gretzky missed the opening month or so of the regular season. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it would suck to get hurt for an ugly trophy inside of an uglier trophy.
Well, and that's the thing. And that's why I say, the trophy, it is what it is. This is more about team pride, and it's more about just the sheer fact that these guys are actually taking this seriously.
Hmm.
And when you see them out there and you see the intensity level that just these preliminary games have taken, I mean, Sweden and Finland played all out against each other. Canada and US played all out against each other.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't like watching an all-star game where everybody goes out there and just plays target practice with the goalies. People were playing defense, they were hitting each other. It was like a regular full-scale NHL game only with all superstars on the ice. And that's what made it. Thing is, those were just preliminary games. Imagine how much more intense it's going to get when the tournament actually starts.
Yeah, because
I
every
mean,
game
USA
counts.
USA wants to win. They want to beat Canada. They want revenge for what happened, in Sochi in the Olympics. They were basically embarrassed back then. This is their chance at retribution, and arguably, Team Canada is the team to beat in this tournament. I mean, Sweden is the team people keep talking about as being the probably the top team, and I don't necessarily disagree. But Team Canada, I mean, look at them. You look at the roster and look at the makeup of that team and how they're able to play. Their only real question is in goal. And after that first game, as soon as Carey Price, knocks the rust off, he'll be all right. Um, I think Team USA has a lot more questions, and it definitely showed in that second game. Um, they have some discipline issues. They need to bring it down a couple notches and start playing a lot smarter. And if they don't, then all of us that were complaining and pointing out the fact that they left off quite a few glaring omissions with not bringing on some more firepower that they could have. I think all of us are going to be dancing a jig of "We told you so."
Yeah, I mean, we're all scratching our heads over Phil Kessel being left off the team, but then again,
It's not just Phil Kessel. I mean, there's plenty of others that you could name that could have brought a lot more scoring that aren't. No, that's not. Look, that's not Tortorella's game. I mean, as a coach,
mhm.
that's not the game that he coaches. Um, so it's a Tortorella game. He gets what he wants. I think the funny part is he's already gone after players, and it's only the preliminary games. He was yesterday. He called out Max Pacioretty after the game.
Mhm.
I mean, and he's already mixed up lines. I mean,
Well, this is the time to do it.
it is the time to do it, but guys were out there gelling, and he brings them back in, and it's like, all right, we're gonna switch all this up, and now they go out there, and the chemistry may not necessarily be there after the fact, and so I don't know. It's I I understand playing all these games, getting ready, figuring out what your lines are going to be and that kind of thing, but I'm anxious to see what the intensity level is once the tournament actually starts.
All right, so who do you have picked for the finals then, or even the final four? I don't think it'd be a big leap of faith to say final four is going to be USA, Canada, Team North America, Sweden, but the final two.
USA. So you're saying USA, Canada, Sweden, and Team North America.
Yes. Well, let's see. We know it's not going to be. I mean, not count our chickens before they've hatched, but probably not going to be Team Europe.
No,
Probably not going to be Czech Republic.
no.
Probably not going to be Russia. I mean, Datsuk is not playing like he was going to play, so
No, and I don't know. Have you watched Russia play?
I haven't
Mal-
watched any of their games.
Malkin and Ovechkin look tired and slow, both of them. So I don't know what's going on.
I mean, maybe they're
It-
just dogging it till the real deal.
yeah, unless they're holding back, that's fine. But to me, they both looked tired, and that's not good.
Okay, so those three. So then we're left with the four that I mentioned, and then Finland. And
Finland
Finland
could
is
be a wild card, but I don't think they will be. I think Finland got lucky against Sweden. Obviously taking the one game to overtime and
Mm-hmm.
Oli Mata scoring that goal,
Mm-hmm.
which was awesome goal. But I think Finland doesn't have all of the depth that the other teams have.
Right. So getting back, so my original, not really a mind blowing prediction of Final Four: USA, Canada, Team North America, Sweden. So
So
who's?
you say Canada won, US two, and then on the other side, Sweden won, North America two?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that sounds about right.
Because the only way you're going to get US final is probably that combination.
Hmm.
Because I could see this sounds stupid, but I could see Team USA beating Sweden. I don't think Team USA could beat Team North America.
I would like to see, and I don't know how we'd have to do this on paper to make this work. I'd actually like to see a final between Team North America and Team Canada.
It would have to be how they were placed. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying I would love that. Would just be crazy.
because the way they have this set up in the end, number one in Group A plays number two in Group B,
Mm-hmm.
and number one in Group B plays number two in Group A.
Mm-hmm.
So it's flip flopped. So it just depends on where they're gonna finish. So if we got 1 and 2 Canada US and 1 and 2 Sweden and North America, there's no way that's gonna play out that way.
All right. Well, anything else before we wrap it up then?
I'm excited to watch some more hockey and interested to see if ESPN tries to parlay this into something more going forward.
Yeah, if this is going to become the replacement for the Olympics, right?
I mean, you never know, or if they could jump, right back in and make a bid for putting games back on ESPN. Who knows?
Ugh, I don't want to think about that.
Hey, you never know. Friday night hockey on ESPN, that wouldn't be bad to watch.
Yeah, Friday at 10:30 at night, right?
Only if it's West Coast.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter @PuckJunk.